And now shifting focuses here, a 98-year-old man that has created massive civilian casualties throughout his entire political career, a man who has been called a war criminal by many prominent individuals and scholars all over the world, I personally called him that to his face, has said something that has shocked the current U.S. foreign policy establishment in Washington, D.C., as he came out during the World Economic Forum meetings and said that Ukraine must give Russia territory in order to ease the tensions and stop this conflict from escalating, specifically urging the United States and the West, along with NATO, to, quote, stop trying to inflict a crushing defeat of Russian forces in Ukraine, warning that it would, of course, have disastrous consequences for the long-term stability of Europe. And when it comes to this kind of assessment here, this definitely doesn't sound like the Kissinger of old, the Cambodia Kissinger. This sounds like a thoughtful Kissinger that's trying to prevent this absolute horrible situation from becoming more horrible, which is leaving a lot of people asking, wait, what's going on here? Wait, why is Henry Kissinger... When Henry Kissinger is trying to de-escalate American foreign policy from being aggressive, you do have to start wondering what is really going on here, whether it's a change of heart by Henry Kissinger, whether it's an overextension of the U.S. military-industrial complex and its over-aggression. No matter what, I think this is something that we should at least heed the advice of and listen to and at least contemplate. As, of course, Henry Kissinger has been warning for a very long time that this conflict would be an utter disaster for the world, and it is, especially when it comes to the larger world that's affected by it already economically. And this is not even detailing the bigger potential consequences of the situation getting even more out of hand from where it already is. And to see Henry Kissinger call for a ceasefire, call for peace talks, call for this conflict to end, to the point where Ukraine is even giving up their own territory for the prospects of peace here, that is a very big ask. And it's something that, of course, Ukraine has been saying that they will not be doing. Throughout this entire conflict, Ukraine and Russia have both moved away from the negotiations table, and because of that, there's a lot of options on the table that, of course, don't look good for the future of both countries and the future of the world. Henry Kissinger is literally warning about how this proxy war between the United States and Russia could be fatal for the United States, specifically saying how this conflict needs to end and should not be allowed to drag on for much longer, as, of course, the West has been bankrolling this conflict, and many people have criticized it as a policy from the United States that is continuing and extending this conflict through proxy, which is making sure that it could go on for a very long time. And there are some military experts that say that this conflict could go on for at least potentially 10 years. And when we look at historical conflicts, that could be the case here. As we've been telling you that this conflict was going to be a lot longer than a lot of other people expected it to be. And it's not just the stability of balance of power in Europe that we should be worrying about here, as of course we kept noting the larger global impact that this conflict will have on the rest of the world. Now, of course, there's some other people countering Henry Kissinger, saying that the United States should try to bleed out Russia, should try to get rid of them as a foe in Europe, that Ukraine should have significant victories against them, that they should not give up any territory, and then by soundly defeating Russia, they get rid of the boogeyman and get rid of their threat. There also could be an assessment to this that I've actually been thinking about within the last few days, that they need to not defeat Putin and Russia in order to still have a viable enemy as an excuse to build up their coffers. And I've been kind of thinking about that as well, seeing that as a potential possibility here. But again, this is all conjecture and just my own personal opinion here on a very complex situation that has many working components to it. A lot of people benefiting in the military-industrial complex for it, while, of course, the poorest people in the world pay the ultimate price for the political advantages of some bureaucrats and the no-bid contracts by some unaccountable multinational corporations. Again, the situation there is tense. The United States is considering deploying special forces in order to protect their embassy in Ukraine. Just moments ago, Japan scrambled jets after Russia and Chinese warplanes flew near their airspace. This, as of course, Henry Kissinger has also been previously warning the Biden administration of U.S.-Chinese conflict, which he would call a catastrophe on the scale of the global conflict that happened in the 1920s. Excuse me, to be accurate here, through 1914 through 1918. But regardless of the situation, I think it's very, very fair to say that we're dealing with a very unstable situation